Hey, you remember that guy who wrote that story about only black people having superpowers? Remember how he was all obsessed about how black bodies were being used and abused? Remember how he was all socially conscious on social media, talking about people jacking black culture and using it for themselves? Well, he's back, and Sore wa izun yorimo Nihonjin desu. Wait, that can't be right. Wait, did this fool just culturally appropriate Japan for his comic about black people? Oh shit, this thing is fucking crazy. Oh, Kwanzaa, what would we do without you? You got this book that's supposed to be about black folks, so you make the main character a ninja with a Muslim apprentice and scatter Japanese throughout the book. So, this is the second of the Black follow-up series. The first was Black as Fuck, America's Sweetheart. That was supposed to be an all-ages book, you can tell by the as fuck in the title, about a girl who looks like a boy who becomes a superhero. I couldn't find the book, so I didn't review it. But I could find Black as Fuck, Widows and Orphans. Let's see what Black Mass has to say about it. Oh, that's pretty short. That tells you a lot since the synopsis is usually a couple of paragraphs. But let's get to it. In a world where all black folks have superpowers, what price do they fetch on the black market? From the pages of Black, this new story features Anansi and Hood Rat investigating a human trafficking ring that will take them across the globe and bring them face to face with dark pasts of abuse, child soldiers, and families torn apart. Okay, fine. That's not a bad premise. It'd help if we knew who Anansi and Hood Rat were. I mean, just from this blurb we don't get much to go on. It's not like Anansi is the Anansi from folklore, and even if he were, the chances of the average person knowing who that was is pretty small. In your synopsis, it's a good idea to tell us who the person is and why this person is handling this mission. Like this. The world at large may have just discovered black people have superpowers, but the black market has known for years. Anansi thought he'd shut it down when he turned on his former buyers, but now the market's open again. Anansi will take them down, all of them, permanently, even if he has to travel the world to do it. There you go. Now you know what's going on in the story enough to make you interested. This is part of the problem with Black Mask basically letting people write whatever they want without editing them. And this story suffers from the same problems the original Black story did. Nothing is explained enough for you to know what's going on. You're just thrown into the story without any mention of what happened in the previous series. There should be some recap for readers who didn't read the other two series, but there isn't. So you lose all context of what's happening at the beginning. If you weren't aware that only black people have superpowers, you're not going to be told that in the book. This is the first issue of a new series, and all the groundwork that should have been handled in the first few pages never happens. But let's start with the art, as usual. The art for the book is done by Tim Smith III. I know it's supposed to be pronounced 3, but I'm not doing it. He also came up with the story and plot. Kwanzaa Sojayefu, Kwanzaa Johnson, co-wrote the story and plot and handled the script and dialogue. Smith's art is okay. When it hits, it works. When it misses, it really misses. The action sequences are usually drawn well and very dynamic. Usually. There are some panels where it looks like Smith rushed through them or wasn't clear on what to draw. Sometimes he skimps on the background in places where it just doesn't work. And then there are places where one page has a great panel and the rest of the panels on a page just aren't that good. Making a comic isn't easy, and it's harder to maintain a high level of detail if this isn't your only job. I don't know what else he does, but if he's not spending 8 hours working on a page, I can easily see this happening. It looks like he's stopping and starting and coming back to it later, and that's why it's inconsistent. It's just that a lot of this stuff is very simple to fix. There are also some panel choices that just make no sense. Here's a good example where Anansi and this random ninja fight. The distance between the two is never consistent, and because of how they're fighting, it's noticeable. But what really drew my attention was this sequence where Anansi shoots webs at the throwing stars, and then we get this close-up panel of the webs being cut, or blocked, or hit. I'm not sure, and there are a bunch of panels like this throughout the book. Since Smith and Kwanzaa are both telling the story, I'm not sure if this is a drawing issue or a scripting issue, or both. Either way, there are several pages where the panel flow works and then suddenly gets confusing. This is where an editor could come in and ask where the extra panel is showing the transitional action, but Black Mask editors don't do that. Now, overall, Smith's style is okay. He's mostly ready, but there are places where it falters, and there are simple mistakes that can take away from the art. The coloring could help cover some of this, but the coloring is just there. It's not terrible, but it's highly saturated and very gradient heavy. Some textures on the gradients could help make the pages less boring, but the simple colors with Smith's style just doesn't work well together. The irony is that this book probably would have looked better in grayscale like the original series. As for the story, yeah, you know what? Okay, so the plot is basically that some black dude with powers is going to become the first superpowered senator. He gets attacked, and these members of an underground hero group called the Project, which is never mentioned, are there to protect him. Anansi and Hood Rat take down the attacker, and it turns out he's from the clan of ninjas that Anansi belonged to called the Amime, which means mesh. Now, why are there still ninjas in this world? And how would they be able to use these kids' powers when it's so easy for these kids to overpower their abusers is never explained. But what's more curious is that this book that's supposed to be about black bodies being used resorts to tropes about Japanese culture for most of the book. So here you are, Mr. Blacker Than Black y'all, aping someone else's culture to bitch about people aping your culture. How does that work? How do you think it's cool for you to culturally appropriate someone else's culture to talk about your culture? And then to use the most tired trope humanly imaginable from that culture. Ninjas? Ninjas. You couldn't think of anything else. That's it. And of all the people who would actually never do this, it would be the Japanese. They're not exactly the most racially open group of people on the face of the planet. And how many black people are there in Japan? According to the original series, there aren't that many black people with power, so where are they getting all these kids from? How are they tracking them down? How are these kids existing in Japan without nobody noticing their black asses? It's not like you wouldn't stick out. You're going to be at least 2 feet taller than everyone there. Oh, you knew there was going to be some racist jokes in here, come on. And where is the Project in all this? They seem to have all this information about all these black people with powers. How come they're not up on this? None of this is explained. You don't have to explain everything in one issue, but you do need to set some stuff up so people have an idea of what's going on. Nope. We get a flashback of Anansi being trained and called Kurokumo, which could mean Black Spider or Black Cloud if Kwanzaa had bothered to include the fucking translation. We do get this bit that different power types affect people's aging process. Apparently, hybrid types age faster than normal, so it's possible that Anansi is younger than he looks. It's not clear why this happens, whether it's from using the power or just being alive, but why tell people that? It literally only takes one word balloon to do it, but fuck it. Then we get this scene with Juncture, the leader of the Project, the group these folks work for, neither of whom are named in the scene. This man talks for a page, pretty much by himself because Anansi never responds, and we never get his name. We don't get it until Hood Rat mentions it a couple of pages later in a club. No one knows who this guy is, but why name him? I get that Anansi is supposed to be the silent type, but the reader needs to know who these people are. You can't have the guy talk for a page and never tell us his fucking name. Where are your editors? Who's editing this book? Sarah Litt. Of course that's your name. Do your job. Jesus Christ, edit the book. So, in a display of the worst ninjutsu ever, Anansi and Hood Rat wear disguises to hide in plain sight in Japan. Because you know black folks can just do that at any point. You're never gonna notice this black dude with this dark ass skin and this girl who actually looks like a rat. Totally not noticeable. Happens in Japan all the time. It's the kaiju and the furries. How did they get to Japan? We don't know. Teleportation, never explained. Why tell you? More fun this way. Now, I know some Japanese fashion is crazy and flamboyant, but there's no way you're walking down the street like that without people staring at you. And since black people, by Anansi's own admission, are a small part of the Japanese population, y'all dark asses are gonna stand out. I mean, those white women are totally staring at you. And as if to prove he doesn't understand the concept of hiding in plain sight, Kwanzaa has Anansi say, "Hiding in the open is a ninja's oldest trick. When people pay more attention to how you look, they can miss what you do." Yeah, see, those are two different things. If you're hiding in plain sight, you're trying not to draw attention to yourself. The idea is to dress and act in a way that would cause people to ignore you or want nothing to do with you if you approach them. These two stand out. 2. Since most black people don't have powers, why would anyone think these two could do anything? Even in the Marvel Universe, where mutants are way more common, the general population didn't assume every person they encountered was a mutant. It seems like there's story we're missing, and I'm guessing that's because Kwanzaa and Smith have this all in their heads or written down or talked about it among themselves, so they know it, but they keep forgetting to tell the rest of us. This is what happened in the Star Wars prequels. There's clearly background information George Lucas knows that he just doesn't share. The result is that we end up with disjointed storytelling and feeling like you're walking into the middle of a conversation. That's how this book reads. So the pair go through this seemingly random club and travel through several rooms that somehow connect and end up at the old entrance to this Amime clan hideout. Then they get this lovely out-of-sequence paneling where the hot Asian girl tells Anansi his return is his death sentence. He throws pictures at her, and then she asks why Anansi is there. No one caught this. 2 writers, one of whom is the artist, a colorist, and an editor, and no one caught that the sequence is out of order. And it keeps happening. A random giant named Kabuto. No, he's nowhere near as cool as the one from Naruto. He attacks, and again, the word balloons are out of order. Your eye follows the top 2 and then moves to the right to the next panel. But there's this other word balloon at the bottom of the page that's completely missed. An editor would really help fix something like that, especially since you've got so much empty space to the right of Kabuto. All you've got to do is move his word balloon to the right and tuck the other one into the new space. But no, why do that? So this guy is apparently another rogue ninja who Anansi is able to scare off. You've got to wonder what these regular Joes thought they were going to do against somebody with powers. They'd have to know they have no chance, so what was the point? Then we get another name for Anansi, Yasuke, but we're never told the woman's name. Who the fuck is this woman? Why is she in charge? How does she know Anansi? Yasuke. And then it turns out that the Amime aren't trading in black lives anymore, but the Russians are, and the group is named the Red Fedora, because when you think Russian, you totally think Fedora. And that's the end of the book. That's how you end the first issue. Oh, it's not the worst Black Mask book, but it continues the questionable storytelling that's so pervasive at this publisher. You just needed to edit the book, pick a different colorist, and this could have worked. The premise isn't bad, but the execution is weak. The bigger issue, though, is that you ditched the original protagonist Kareem for a typical ninja story. You still haven't finished Kareem's story, and you're already moving on to 2 other characters. It's like Kwanzaa and Smith want their own version of Marvel's X-Men, but they want the crazy late 90s 47 titles version. Well, hold on, son. Build up the first team before you start expanding. You still got all the fallout from the first series to deal with, and you skipped it for a generic story that is so poorly explained that there's no reason to care about the characters. Should I say it again? Fine, I'll say it. Where are your editors? Someone should have told you this stuff. You have a viable, albeit racist idea. At least try to make it work. Why are you ditching your original character and then moving on? You haven't even finished his story. We don't know anything about him. We don't know what's going on with him other than his little cameo in America's Sweetheart. God, this is just so terribly done. It's really not hard to do this stuff. You have a guide. It's called the X-Men. If you follow that guide, you should have no problem. But it's like you want to copy it without actually trying to understand it. And it's clear, 3 books in now, that Kwanzaa has zero idea of what he's actually doing. It would be fine if he actually tried to make a coherent story, but he's jumping all over the place, trying to get to his point before he actually sets it up. And so it ends up being a complete mess. And now here we are again, 3 different series in. I haven't read one of them, but I've watched Diversity in Comics review, and it's the same problem. This dude does not know how to tell a story. He's so interested in his political agenda and point that he keeps skipping over the most basic information your audience needs in order to care about the characters you're introducing them to. Here's a thought. Why don't you go and buy the book On Writing by Stephen King, read it, then read it again, then read it again, then go and read your scripts so you can see what's wrong with them. It's just an idea. I think it might actually help you improve as a writer, or at least catch your mistakes. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.